We've been discussing the latest in alternative housing trends, and one trend that has become increasingly popular among Zoomers, not new, but become more popular certainly in the last few years, is the tiny house, generally anywhere between 100 and 400 square feet. Are you a believer in the tiny house?
Well, it's definitely a way or a form, especially now with new policy allowing for more laneway suites and garden suites. This is where I can see those, you know, become, I mean, it has disadvantages that we can
So here's
speak
an
to.
example, right? I mean, it looks really neat from the outside. It seems a little bit small on the inside, but then you're going for sort of a more of a minimalist approach. Do you like the tiny house?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, really the challenge is the moment you put a house on wheels, lenders are very resistant, and basically you have to pay cash for it or get a personal loan. So shelter that's attached to the land, easy to get a mortgage.
Why are lenders resistant to it?
Do you know, I mean, the reality is that most of the value of a property is in the land.
Right.
And the house that's on it is depreciating. So from the moment it's built, it's just like a car, it's aging, and you have to start maintaining it and fixing it and all that sort of thing. And over the time of span that you own your house, you're spending easily hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Just keeping it upgraded. The issue with the tiny home is it's just like a car. They see it becoming obsolete at a certain period of time, and it's just going to devalue down to zero. And that is what's holding back this as a popular housing form.
But you know what I love about the tiny home movement is that it brings up to this concept when we talked earlier about leaving the city. There is a trade-off, and the trade-off is live in the neighborhood you love, age in place, be next to amenities, your coffee shop, everything. Don't leave the city. And maybe you don't get your home anywhere, whether it's a family or if you downsizer. But the point is that there's a trade-off. You can live with less space, and yes, even for a family, but you get to live in the neighborhood you want to age in place and you want to raise your kids in.
But you can't just build a tiny house anywhere.
Oh, no, and that's part of the issue, because I mentioned all those municipalities, over 3,000 in the country, they all have to have regulations that permit any of these type of housing units that we're talking about. Right. What I like about the tiny home, and also modular housing, is it caters, if you will, to a market of single people primarily. And the problem with our housing market in the country has been it assumes it's a 3-bedroom house, and it's a family with 2 kids and a mom and dad, and they're both income earners. But for a person who's single and is trying to find a place to live either in the country or in a non-urban center or in an urban center in this country, they can't do it on one income. They can't do it affordably.
Precisely.
And so this is an affordable option that, like modular housing as well, for people that are renters or homeless, that provides a spectrum of housing. And that's really what we need in this country. We need it right across the board, a spectrum of housing that provides housing opportunity for everybody.
The profile of people who need housing are changing. And so the types of housing that need to be available need to change along with that. We have multi-families living in the same housing, just the same as, to your point, single families or smaller families who want smaller housing. And it's about providing options and then ergo financial options as well too for those types of homes. So I'm a big fan.
To reflect the diversity of our communities.
Exactly.
That our housing does not reflect the diversity.
That's precisely it. Yeah.
I was just going to say, and all the pictures that are up on the screen are all of detached microhomes.
Very luxury.
Right? And if we start pulling it together...
They look luxurious, right?
Yeah, but if you start pairing those together and you can concentrate, for instance, the mechanical in one spot in the house, again, you can achieve another layer of affordability than if they're all fully detached and all require their own plumbing and electrical and everything like that.
And to your point, right, part of our housing crisis is a function of, we built all of these condominiums on land, but the condominium in the 70s, 80s was the new tiny home, basically,
Yes.
right? This was a high-density dwelling that was as affordable as it could be. Of course, there were luxury condominiums, but it was actually introduced to cater to single professionals, right, and couples. Because in the 50s and 60s, you basically didn't leave your family home until you got married and you bought your new home to raise your family. And then we started in the 60s seeing the birth of the single and the Mary Tyler Moores, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that condominium has served us well, but basically we don't have much space left. And this is why we're starting to try reach out for other alternatives.
Meanwhile, there are other forms of modular or prefab homes. Let's pull up the image of the shipping container home for the audience to see. I mean, it's pretty fascinating that this is being used now as a form of accommodation, a shipping container.
It's part of almost like the climate renewable materials movement as well, too. Because if you look at the home itself, it doesn't look all too different than a mobile home, right? But the shipping container is trendy because it's taking these materials that are essentially byproducts of another industry and giving it another life, a life that serves quite a significant purpose in addressing another big issue in our society, like housing.
But again, you can't just plop it down in the middle of an urban center, Sean. Is this more popular in maybe rural areas?
No, I've actually seen them in Vancouver.
Oh, really? Really?
But primarily as like what we call pilot or demonstration projects, because you can't really scale them. And what we really need in this country is we need proposals and ideas that can be scaled, because if you're going to meet those 2-3 million homes over the next 10 years, it's got to be volume.
Well, and to your point, right, is that we really need to house the people who are most critically in need. And so if you're homeless, getting a shipping container is a move up, right? If you have, you know, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you can be secure, safe, warm, if you can start meeting those needs, then you're going to help inspire that person to...
And the City of Toronto did exactly that. In 2020, deep into COVID, what the City of Toronto said, we're going to build those modular, as a whole, it comes in 3D. I saw that in Spadina. A truck driving down Spadina with the units, it's three-dimensional, and you just stack it 3 stories, stack one on top of each other. And just to look back to your first question about communities, they had to do that through a unique process called Ministry Zoning Order, when they had to shrink down, no community consultation, we're not asking you for your opinion, no, not in my backyard. And it was done day 1 till completion in 8 months. Yeah. Unheard of, but it's something that we needed, and it was clear to the city that they had to do that in a very unique approval route.
I mean, I think part of the innovation is the manufacturing in a factory. And I think we're going to see much more of that in the future, as opposed to everything done on-site, and the delays involved in on-site construction versus as opposed to manufactured housing in factories. I think we're going to see a big move in that direction.
Absolutely, because you've got the opportunity to recycle, upcycle, like it's all in-house, and that's just so much more efficient.
All right, stick around. We'll be right back.